Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Wait, Are These Guys Friends? I am Mike, and I am here with my perennial maybe friend, Randy. Randy, how are you?
Acquaintance, associates.
Acquaintance. Listen,
we're come up with a better synonym for it.
We are above acquaintances for sure. Like we've broken bread together. We've had a drink together. We host a weekly podcast together. We're past acquaintances.
I think we need we talk about The Simpsons a lot on this, and I think we need the Mo lie detector thing. It's going through.
Dinner alone. Dinner with friends. Dinner alone. Watching TV alone.
Acquaintance. Best friend. All right, we're gonna find it.
Fine. I'm gonna sit at home and Google the girls in the Victoria's Secret catalog. No, Sears catalog.
And then the best part about that whole thing, I know we're just repeating a joke, but is that I don't deserve this. So good.
Can I please get this? Man, so if I'm a little out of it, I have been up since 4 o'clock this morning. As of recording, it is currently 7 p.m.
Hey, me too.
Oh, really? All right. So what you're telling me is I have no excuse for being exhausted.
You probably worked harder today than I did, so.
It was a day, man. It was a day. Without getting into too many details, I was doing a new show and sport I haven't done before in my TV job. And so it was more like, what is different about this one? And it was a lot of learning today just to get stuff situated, set up for the game I'm doing. But you know what? I've also not worked a bit this week, and I watched some things. So we can get into what we watched, but feel free to start us off. What did you watch?
So I had some instances where I was working very early, which is kind of uncommon for me. I usually work a little bit more towards the middle of the day to the end of the day. And I was home by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I think I was putting away laundry or something like that. I just needed something I needed to throw on in the background. And as I was flipping through Hulu, I had been hearing a lot about Reservation Dogs and had never, so I gave it a shot and started watching it, and just, wow, I've blown through the first 7, 8 episodes in the last, of the first season in the last couple of days.
Is this another restaurant show?
Huh? No. Reservation Dogs is a FX, dramedy kind of show. That takes place on a reservation in Oklahoma, and it's Taika Waititi is a co-executive producer with it, but everyone else basically on the cast and crew are indigenous people, so Native Americans, which is really
that's awesome. I'm kind of over Taika Waititi, but that's awesome.
So he stays out of the way. I think he only helps with the co-writing. He's not in it. Okay. He just is one of the co-executive producers. So
public persona. And they gave him too much power over the last Thor. And it really showed, sometimes, you need boundaries to really make a genius shine. And they got to work within a system, and they can really get creative. The Thor Love and Thunder was what happens when they took his boundaries away, and it wasn't great.
And I would say he defers, in this instance, to the other co-executive producer, who is a noted indigenous filmmaker who has won a lot of awards for both his documentaries and his filmmaking over the past 15 years. And it's the first season especially was universally beloved. I think 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and just was on a lot of critics' top 10 lists, and for good reason. It is for teenagers that are trying to just exist in this reservation town. And they're sort of sometimes petty criminals, sometimes it's a very kind of, I don't want to say backwoods town, but just very Midwest kind of Dust Bowl type town. And the performances are really, really good. Just very, very sharp, defined characters. It's very funny. It's very authentic, I think. And it's a perspective you don't see given, and it's authentic. I shouldn't say it's authentic, but it very much feels authentic because of the input. Well, because of the input that's given from the cast and crew that are on there. It's not, I'm not going to knock Dances with Wolves, but it's not like saying this is how we portray this to be. It is.
Are you saying that you don't like Dances with Wolves or The Last Samurai, or I'm trying to think of more white savior films where the random white person is the one that's going to solve all the problems.
Fair.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
No,
Very
and I think the best part about it is at times you forget it's just a story about kids fucking around.
It's great.
Which is it's like, or teenagers fucking around. It just has a kind of nostalgic that it's easy to connect to because the characters are really well defined and really well played. Like it's not typecast or stereotypical type stuff. It's just that they all have kind of these own little and there's a defining event at the beginning of the season, at the beginning of the series that they're all dealing with, I guess, for lack of a better term, and they're all responding to, and you just kind of see that develop throughout. Really good. They're all half hour, 35-minute shows, and I'm really into it. So
I kind of typecasted you just now because you always talk about the bear. So when you said reservation, I just assumed you needed to pivot to another show about cooking. Like I genuinely he's on his shit.
I must be drawn to it. My father-in-law's a retired chef. It's like.
What was his specialty? Like, is there a cuisine or anything that he was like particularly?
The restaurant he worked at in Boston, he did a couple different places, but was more French American fusion. So, but
how do you feel he would have done on Iron Chef?
I think he would have done very well. And then
could he have been a main competitor, or is he like one of the sous chefs who's on the side?
I think he could have done either. I think he would have been less thrilled with the latter.
If you were going to go on an Iron Chef, Randy,
oh God,
and it's not going to be you have to face one of the proper Iron Chefs, but you get to pick the secret ingredient. What is it going to be?
Hot honey.
Interesting. I did not expect that. I was expecting some kind of meat or something. That's great. That's a big one. I don't know. I have Sling TV. I signed up for Sling.
Okay.
About
that's still a thing. Okay.
It is. And here's the thing. I did it because it's still barely a thing. The price has become very reasonable.
Yeah.
And I don't do the package with
I don't know
both,
if the two are related, but
Well, I mean, they dropped the price because you know what I mean? It's not. YouTube TV has the best interface of all the cable streamers, but they're too fucking expensive. They are too fucking expensive. Up. It's
and
ridiculous.
They're dropping certain things if you like certain channels that are regional specific.
But with Sling, I get two of my local channels. I get Fox and NBC, and then I get USA for my wrestling, which is what I really care about. But then the biggest ones are these 24-hour channels that they put out. They have one thing going for 24 hours. And I have gotten into just black holes of there is a 24-hour Price is Right channel. What? And my God. And it's like I watched one of like the first season Bob Barker episodes where they were still calling it The New Price is Right. And his hair is jet black.
Jet black.
And his sexual harassment had never been stronger. Yes. And then
that's kind of what Tubi does, right? Like they group stuff together, right?
Yes, it's a similar thing. And now Sling is doing it with your regular channels, and now you get this. And I tend to find myself, I've been watching these channels more than regular. They just added this one. They added a Kids in the Hall 24-hour channel.
Oh God. Did they know you were getting some TV?
It's amazing. It's not the Amazon show, but it's the 5 seasons just running on a loop 24 hours a day.
Hot take, was not as big a fan of the Amazon one. Like I know they were trying
a lot. I liked it a lot. I thought maybe it was just because I missed them. Maybe it was sentimental.
Could be.
I should revisit. Honestly, I should revisit it and see how it holds up.
I think I was putting it on too much of a pedestal just because I adore the other seasons.
That's fair. That's fair. I love the opening, which was them being dug up from the grave they were put in at the end of the show. I thought that was great. And then Dave Foley screaming at the camera, "Am I still the cute one?" And so I really appreciated that. But then there's one other one that my friend Jamie and I actively text about this channel. We have regular ongoing conversations about this 24-hour channel because we both watch it so much lately.
Yeah.
The 24-hour Supermarket Sweep channel.
Oh, don't you tell me with a good time.
It is so good. And my other favorite part of it is how many of the people are clearly gay. And how many of them, because it's 1992, are like, we've been business partners for 15 years. Oh, She's my roommate. We used to go to school together. We've worked together. We started a business. I was like,
I would have never thought of that as something as
it is so obvious that some of these people are just so deeply in love and can't admit it in 1993.
That is,
it is amazing.
That reflects on such a time where you can't bring that up to any, like, it's what, a 12-year period of people, maybe
yes,
maybe like 8. Well, like, an age range of about 8 years that know everything and are obsessed with Supermarket Sweep, and then on either end of that for 40 plus years, they'll have no idea what you're talking about.
Yep, that's 100% correct. But man, when they do the big run at the end, they always go for the coffee because they think they're getting that little bonus. The coffee is a waste of time. The coffee is a waste of time. Don't grind the coffee.
The hams.
Don't look for the special items.
Big ass hams.
Yes, and the cheese wheels. Get the cheese wheels and the hams. Yeah. God, we would have been so good on Supermarket Sweep.
As co-host of a podcast, and then people are like, 30 years later.
As just roommates. Randy and I are just roommates talking about our... Oh, no.
Where have we gone?
So what's funny is that wasn't the first thing I thought of when I thought of what I watched this week. But I realized that is why I don't have anything super original to say I've watched. Because a lot of what I've watched is TV from 30 to 40 years ago on a loop.
I'll be honest, I'm more entertained by these two selections than I am by some of the stuff that you may have watched.
I also watched, because there's not to, plug another podcast that has more audience and is better than ours probably, is the Weekly Planet does their Caravan of Garbage series.
Okay.
Where it's not all bad movies. It's a takeoff of the Caravan of Courage from Star Wars, the Ewok thing.
Yep.
But they've been revisiting the Alien series, and it inspired me to honestly just revisit 1 through 3. I stayed away from Resurrection and a lot of the other ones, but I rewatched the original Alien and the special edition of the original Alien. And then I watched just the director's cut of Aliens, because the director's cut of Aliens is endorsed by James Cameron and significantly better than the theatrical version. It really is. I love the original Alien, or I love Aliens, the theatrical. But if you have never seen the director's cut of Aliens, there are scenes in there that I forget aren't in the theatrical because they're so iconic to me. Yeah, it's crazy. Have you seen it?
I have. It's been a while, but yes, I have seen it, and I would agree. Yeah.
I would say that scene with the turrets, right, where the aliens are coming down the corridor and the turrets are just unloading. That's in the special edition, which is crazy because that is like a key scene to me in that movie.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's also the scene that has Newt's family before the planet is overrun, before the colony is overrun, which I always thought was really nice because I know you didn't need to establish Newt because it's pretty obvious what her story is and what's happened. But I don't know, I liked it. It made it even sadder seeing that you saw her family, you had that small connection to them.
Good storytelling for sure.
And then what's not good storytelling, even though they kind of tried, and I haven't watched, there's something called the assembly cut for Alien 3, and I have not watched it. It is not a director's cut because David Fincher hates that movie, and anyone that's ever talked about it, has seen it, or been associated with it. He hates everything about it.
Okay.
But his producer got approval from him to put together his original cut, and they called it the assembly cut. I'm told it's better, and it sounds interesting, and it fixes some of the plot holes. But you know what it doesn't fix is the fact that in the first 10 minutes of Alien 3, they kill Hicks and Newt and negate the entire emotional journey you went on in the second movie. It hurts. There was a point in time where I couldn't... We talked last week about How I Met Your Mother finale, or 2 weeks ago we talked about it, where it's so depressing, that finale, I couldn't go back to rewatch the series. There was a point in time where Alien 3 did that to me for Aliens, but Aliens is so good I got over it.
Yeah, I mean, you got 2 or 3. Unfortunately, then Resurrection came and the percentage started to go down, but
oh my god, I actually
dismissed that altogether. So
we may have talked about this before, but have you seen the trailer for Alien Romulus? I can't remember if we talked about this on the show yet.
I don't remember what it was. A preview of something I saw recently. Like they showed
Deadpool. It was before Deadpool. Yeah,
you're right. Yep.
Which we may have talked about this on the Deadpool episode. I think about it. listen, it's Alien and Aliens. It's a mashup, right? It's clearly just, but you know what is great? There hasn't been an Alien movie that worked in like 25 years. So take the two that worked, make one out of it. And hopefully it's good.
There's nothing wrong with updating something if it's done well. I would say, to bring it back into a new audience, or to have the previous audience enjoy the ride once again. I mean, what Halloween did that, right? So
yeah, yes, and that first one is really good. And then the other two happened, so that's true. Increasingly diminishing returns. I really liked that first Halloween revamp, and not
that's what I mean.
The Rob Zombie revamp, the David Gordon Green revamp. The Rob Zombie ones can die a death. It was the David Gordon Green Halloween where he goes, "Oh, I got peanut butter on my penis." So I mean, that movie will live in infamy forever. Yep. God, I really want to watch the Supermarket Sweep tonight. I'm gonna go to bed. I am ignoring this. Like, I'm thinking about this while we're talking. It's like, God, I really want to watch the Supermarket Sweep right now. It's gonna be good. It'd be real good. I want one of those big.
Can you log into Sling TV in multiple places? I mean, like, can we live watch some episodes?
Oh yeah, that's what we should do. You know what? We have been joking about how we should try to do like a DVD commentary or a movie commentary. That's too much. You're absolutely right. We should try to do a Supermarket Sweep live watch.
Because then we're just goofing on it as opposed to trying to be like, all right, now we got to think about the research that we did and stuff like that. I
am willing to try this. It could be a disaster, but I'm willing to try this.
All right. Thoughts for the future.
Is there anything else you watched this week you want to talk about?
No, that was the main thing. Once I kind of started to find that a couple days ago, the Reservation Dogs every day have come home. I'm like, nice. I'm going to watch 2 more episodes of this.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way about really Supermarket Sweep and Price is Right. It's good.
Nice.
By the way, I would like to note that the Price is Right channel is specifically labeled Price is Right the Barker years. There is no Drew Carey to be found on this channel.
Probably for the best.
Which I don't mind him, but if I really want to unwind, I want Bob Barker. You got anything else? Anything else? Do you want to talk about the Price is Right more?
There was one thing. I mean, we can jump into this and maybe a slight aside, right? I just sent you earlier today from The Price is Right. Yes.
My gosh. No, you're right. We need to talk about that. Yes. Oh my goodness.
I wanted to talk about the Saturday Night Live movie that appears to be coming out that Jason Reitman is directing, which I just saw the trailer for and sent you earlier today. And so we don't have a ton of reaction to it, but I was very intrigued by the trailer.
It's well performed. I didn't look it up. Who's the actor playing Lorne Michaels? He already seems very good.
I had it here.
Also, it seems like
Gabriel LaBelle.
Okay. Do you get the impression that it's funny talking about the movie Here, the trailer for Here recently? This looks the opposite, where it looks like they're going to do a real time. Like at a certain point, it looks like it's the night of the show. The trailer made it look like there won't be time skips. You know what I mean? Like it's the night of the show and we're watching it in real time, which really seems fascinating to me. And the cast, my God, they all look pretty good, but the guy playing Dan Aykroyd looks like 1975 Dan Aykroyd. I double took. I did a double take.
And I'm looking these up. Dylan O'Brien. It looks like I think it's Garrett Morris's son that's playing Garrett Morris.
No fucking way. That's
so that
great.
Would be a nice. It's almost like what was the NWA movie where Ice Cube's kid played Ice Cube and
yeah. That's great.
I'm looking to see. So the guy who plays Lorne Michaels was in The Fabelmans, the Spielberg movie about his childhood, but not about his childhood. It looks like the guy who plays Dan Aykroyd is in the Teen Wolf drama show.
Not a clue. No, I never watched.
And the Maze Runner series, which I also did.
Hashtag not my Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I thought the guy, just from the brief looks at it, the casting of the guy who plays Chevy Chase is really good too. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. These all look real good. Honestly, the problem with the Belushi casting to me, he's the only one. I get Belushi maybe because of the nature of who Belushi was. He's the only one that looks like a cartoon character in the poster. They all look like real serious actors, and he looks like but maybe that's just him, you know?
Yeah, this is interesting. Matthew Rhys is in it uncredited. Why is that? Or not uncredited, like not assigned to a character, I should say. So not like he's credited, but he's not. I don't know.
Maybe I mean, the trailer just came out. They don't know who it is.
Maybe they're high.
But I see the Andy Kaufman casting, the Jim Henson casting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Man,
Huh?
some of these are looking real cool and real good. That's fascinating. Oh, Matthew Reese is George Carlin.
Oh, nice. Who was the
Yes.
original host? The first host of Saturday Night Live. So this, yeah, and J.K. Simmons is Milton Berle. How about this?
Wow.
There's some good stuff here. If you have not seen that trailer, go find it on YouTube or
Yeah,
it's
it
called
looks
Saturday
really
Night,
impressive.
right?
Do we know if this is being done with the approval of anybody, or is this one of those people are going to come out and be like, yeah, that's not the fucking case?
I hope so. I mean, I would think since Jason Reitman is directing it, I would think that has some sort of, just because he had to tie to all those guys, like, or his dad did anyway.
Oh, because of Ghostbusters. I was like, what do you mean? But yeah,
Ivan Reitman directed a bunch of them.
No, I just forgot. I forgot about that part. Yeah, I forgot about Jason Reitman and the Ghostbusters movies. I don't think about. So
And the other writer, it's funny how it's like one of the main people they're putting on it is an NBC page that is played by Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, and it's like, okay, that's an odd way to get the poll there, but
I say clearly Jason Reitman just fell in love with Finn Wolfhard and their BFF.
And so I think the other thing, the co-writer of it is Jason Reitman directed both of the new Ghostbusters movies, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, you're correct. I definitely didn't just go.
I'm hoping this is a coincidence and not a check mark in the negative. So.
Well, I feel like what has he directed other than those Ghostbusters movies? Was there anything I gave a shit about?
I thought he did something that was.
Did he do Thank You for Smoking? I did. I liked that movie a lot. And he did Up in the Air, which I liked a lot. Yes.
Oh, I did like Up in the Air. Yeah.
All of his pre-Ghostbusters movies I liked a lot. I would like him to stop making Ghostbusters.
I liked Juno. You didn't like Juno?
I said all of his pre-Ghostbusters movies I liked a lot. I just didn't name it. So yeah. Sorry. I also didn't name Young Adult. Sorry.
I was playing. Which, actually, that was pretty good. That was the Charlize Theron, Patton Oswalt movie.
Yeah, it was. That was pretty good too. That's why I said I like all of his movies since Ghostbusters. And we don't need to get into this.
Let me name another one and see if you like that. Yeah. But no.
I want them to stop making Ghostbusters as a concept in all ways. Please. And thank you.
You're not wrong.
We don't have a transition to our next topic. We just kind of decided we wanted to do something. We have been brainstorming about people we like and different careers and different things. And recently, after Bob Newhart passed, we were kind of talking about older celebrities. Who do we have left? And it got a little depressing. Yes. We started talking about Mel Brooks, who's still, thankfully, dear Lord, I hope I don't jinx him with this, around and kicking at the time of recording. And so we decided to do a little deep dive on his career and just really look at his directing. We touch a little bit on some of the others, I think we will. But mainly the directing portion, the big stuff, the famous stuff. Before we get into breaking down films, movies, what does his stuff mean to you? Like, what do you think of? What do you think of him, his era, his films? What are your first thoughts?
I think it's my initial introduction to it was that it was in the same kind of farcical or parody or just kind of screwball kind of jokes that were the Zucker brothers, but there's so much he's so much more in depth than that, whereas he's
more intellectual.
Yeah, and he I think is more
until he's not, which is great.
Fair, but he is more of a filmmaker than those two, I would say. Like he he is an auteur, whatever you want to call it. Like he has elements to the way that he wants to create a film to make it appear something, and I think that's what makes his comedy work so much better, because it is a situation where things are just insane that are happening, or he is not afraid to break the fourth wall. I think there's stuff that is always funny, even though it can be kind of accused of being lowbrow, or it can be accused of being something that's like low-hanging fruit or just taking jokes, but there's always something to it that is consistently really funny. And I think that I am always delighted at his comedy. I'll put it that way. Where even when I shouldn't be, when it's not, when it's a topic or a turn of phrase or something that is not necessarily PC by any stretch of the imagination, and there is very little PC in Mel Brooks stuff.
One of the things I hate so much is I feel like he's one of those creators where there are your older boomers, your people are like, oh, couldn't get away with Mel Brooks today, blah, blah, blah. And maybe technically you're right in his approach, but his approach was also subversive for his era. I
Sure.
think truly that he is the type of creative that if he were coming up active and innovating with his same creative drive and his same mind, and he had gone up through today's culture, he would still be subverting, creative, and innovating and pushing boundaries in the way that we would today. Do you get my meaning? Like,
I think he would find a way to push the envelope regardless of the standards that are set within.
right.
He
And
was expert at
yes.
walking that line. Yeah.
And was his envelope pushing maybe a way we wouldn't push it today? Yes. But I think that's just because that's who he was in his era. He is such a person that if he just showed up a year ago and he had all the same skills and all the same talent, he would do it just in a different way, but it would be as funny, is my mindset, which it sounds like I hope you agree with.
I do, and you could tell by the people that wanted to work with him. So this was not just I'm only able to get this person. I mean, he found his people and stuck with it. But we've talked about a bunch of different directors that do that, so he's not unique in that scenario. But it's what I think there, and you see it more in. There's some stuff about we can get to in Spaceballs that I found out about, but there are some decent people that are interested to work with him, and even if they don't want to work with him, this is another fun one from Blazing Saddles. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but there's some fun casting things in Blazing Saddles that we can get to on the way. But let's please we'll start at the top.
Listen, Mel Brooks is every classic, greatest generation performer. He was in World War II. He served in France. He was a reporter with the United States Department of Defense. He was embedded there. He was in Belgium, and they love us in Belgium. We talk about that all the time. They love us in Belgium. He was a combat engineer, and he participated in the Battle of the Bulge, which is just like, it's Mel Brooks. And you think about this, and he doesn't talk about it a lot, but he's talked about his experiences in war, and it's as deep and dramatic as you can imagine. But it's for that reason, and as a Jewish man, that he has spent so much of his life making fun of Hitler and making fun of the Nazis, and just he's deeply liberal to this day. So many people say as you get older, you get more Republican, and no. And also, same with Dick Van Dyke. I want to know, who's 98 and was stumping for Bernie Sanders. And I was like, I love you guys. You guys are okay. It's you lived through these times and you know better. Good work out of you. And you're like, we don't always like talk about politics, I know, but I can't help but say that because fuck yeah, let's get that. I don't think it's a very dramatic thing to say I'm anti-Nazi. So
yes, agreed.
I think I'm all right there.
I think too, we see it's that they remain being both for Dick Van Dyke and Mel Brooks remain very, very sharp. So it's great to see the people that we love to have these biting takes or these great quick wits, and that has not mercifully. I mean, it's very uncommon for people that are their age to have that go away.
It's the same thing with Carl Reiner, who is Mel Brooks' best friend. I don't know if you ever seen any of the documentaries. They did a Carl Reiner documentary that basically turned into a Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks documentary because after both of their wives passed, they spent all their time together until Carl Reiner passed in 2020. Carl Reiner. I am saying it's Carl Reiner. And I'm saying Carl Reiner because of Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern. And my brain was doing that. It is Carl Reiner. And I keep saying Carl Rayner because there's a Green Lantern named Kyle Rayner. And my brain is really breaking as I try to say these words. I need to clear that up right now, that my brain cannot process, because I talk about Kyle Rayner way more than I talk about Carl Reiner. Wow, my brain, that's my brain.
There you go.
Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks are best friends. There's, as much as I don't love Jerry Seinfeld, if you ever look at the comedian in Cars Getting Coffee with the two of them, fucking brilliant.
I bet.
And some of the saddest interviews that I've read in recent times were Mel Brooks talking about all the people that he's lost, and Carl Reiner, I almost did it again, was the most recent and just the most heartbreaking because he's like, I don't
Yeah.
watch Jeopardy anymore because that was Carl's a nice thing. And I'm just like,
Oh,
oh God, oh God. But all of this dials back to the fact that they got their real big breaks post-war writing for television.
hmm
They were television writers and resort stand-up writers in the Catskills. They both started writing for Sid Caesar on Your Show of Shows. And that's what the Dick Van Dyke Show became, which Carl Reiner co-created to tie all that in together because he played the host of the show that Dick Van Dyke wrote for. And Dick Van Dyke was Carl Reiner. And I forget the name of the other guy in the writer's room with Dick Van Dyke was basically Mel Brooks.
oh,
That
okay.
show was Carl Reiner. Mel Brooks writing shows
Oh,
was
wow.
what the
Okay.
Dick Van Dyke show was. And then meanwhile, Mel Brooks went on to work with Buck Henry and co-create Get Smart, which is one of my favorite shows of all time to this day. I love Get Smart. I watched so many reruns on Nick at Night as a kid. Just
Yeah.
a breathtakingly funny show. It's one of those ones that is probably of its time in regards to technology, comedy, whatever, but it's also so screwball and Don Adams is so stupid and endearing that it still plays well. It's
Yeah.
delightful. But then he makes his first feature film. He makes and directs The Producers. And by God, is The Producers just so good. And I'm not talking about the musical. And I'm not talking about the musical that became the movie musical. I'm talking about the original Producers, 1967, Gene Wilder starring, what's the other guy's name? Zero
Zero was
Mostel,
Yep.
and with Mel Brooks writing and directing. Just my goodness, it's amazing. To this day, it's amazing. If you know the plot of The Producers, the musical, you know the plot of The Producers, the film. It's the same deal without songs. And I like it more because Gene Wilder is so good as he's
one
the
song, but
nervous. Well, Springtime for Hitler is in it because
yeah.
they are producing a musical that they want to turn into a bomb,
Yeah.
but it is not a musical,
Right.
is what I'm
Correct.
trying to
Yes.
say. The concept of them producing musicals there, it is not a musical. But Gene Wilder, this is their first time really working together here. They've been, it's amazing. It starts a fruitful partnership, starts a friendship. And what can you say else? It's just, he's Gene Wilder. He's so likable and so good and so fantastic in it.
It's just this, it's a brilliant take on conventions and perceptions, right? Everything
Yes.
that we think is, given the right context and framing, something that is, I don't know, horrific or unjust or despicable can be exposed, and then it's ultimately like you enjoy. Just I don't know, you enjoy the turn that happens.
You also have to think about how shocking the idea of they're going to produce a bomb play about Hitler in 1967. Like, this is
22 years
just over 20 years after the end of World War II. That's a, whoo boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not that. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if I want to go there. That would be like if we did something about that, like about 9/11. I mean, that's the essential.
I was almost said that. I almost said that would be the perfect example.
And then I did. So it's a, but oh well.
Yeah. No, it's right.
But I want to get back to something you said about Gene Wilder. And so I don't know if you came up with this in some of the trivia, but like, so Mel Brooks met him when he was doing a play with his girlfriend at the time, eventually his wife, Anne Bancroft, on stage. And when he met him afterwards, when Gene Wilder met Mel Brooks after the play, he said he was getting frustrated because he would go out there and he would try to do these very dramatic performances, and then people would almost be laughing at him. There was something to it. And Mel Brooks told him, he said, "You're just a natural comic. There's something that's almost like Harpo Marxian about you. You have this.
That's good.
You have this way of your frustration, or it's something that people tend to just be more amused by that. Like, but there's something there, or there's something you can use that to your advantage." And so that was I know he always kind of had him as his guy after he met him there, which is pretty crazy. And Peter Sellers was actually the first invite for the audition for that character. Just
Yeah,
never
well, I think I read he said yes, and then never called them back.
never called
He
him.
was like, "Yeah, it sounds great," and then
That's the most Peter Sellers thing ever. But
did you know the other weird casting note about this one? And it ties into his
it
girlfriend and
does.
future wife, Anne
I did,
Bancroft.
but go for it. Yeah, by all means.
Dustin Hoffman was originally cast as what is it, Hans Liebkind, Franz
Mm-hmm.
Liebkind, which obviously would go on to be a little Hitlery, and
Yeah.
you kind of see that with the Dustin Hoffman casting in 1967, short, you know, black hair, etc. But he left and begged to get out of it to go do The Graduate, which became his big break, which co-starred Anne Bancroft.
To go audition for it, actually. So and part of the reason Brooks let him go because he didn't think he was going to get it.
Nice.
And so, but yes, but Anne Bancroft obviously being in there, Mrs. Robinson, I think you're trying to seduce me. That's Mel Brooks's wife. So yeah, it's super fun, great, and the film as it was released, I think still had a little bit of that trepidation just because of the film. I don't know if just the way that films were being more reviewed at that time, but it's definitely risen in stature and acclaim over the years. Like it's one of those that's I don't want to say aged well, but it is grown more beloved as it's.
And I would like to know, while we're talking about Anne Bancroft, one of the biggest things about reading his autobiography that I guess when you get to 98 years old, this is going to happen. Everyone that were his best friends and everyone that was in his life has kind of passed on now. He has his son, and he loves his son. Max Brooks, by the way, who wrote World War Z and the Zombie Survival Guide, is Max Brooks. Really fun books that came out in like the late 2000s, 2010s. But
there's a movie, right? World War Z?
Yeah, don't watch World War Z. It's fucking terrible. The book is amazing.
Okay.
It's not a narrative book. The book is a series of like short stories and anecdotes about the zombie apocalypse and things that have happened after the world ended. The movie took the name and turned it into a Brad Pitt narrative action adventure.
Gotcha.
So it's none of the charm of the book is in the movie.
Okay.
They bought the name essentially.
Okay.
So
understood.
Reading Mel Brooks talk about how much he loved his wife who passed away in 2005, and just like the fact that he never thought, like, they were perfect together, and he was also just always in awe of her. And it was just, and it's reading all of these things about all of these names, all of his stories. And again, when you're 98, this is probably bound to happen. It's just really sad because he's a genius and everyone loves him, but he seems very isolated at this point, especially because he wrote the book during COVID when he was a 96-year-old in lockdown.
Jeez.
And could only, and it's just, the book has amazing anecdotes and stories, but also has a real air of isolation because everyone has passed on. It's kind of intriguing in that way.
Yeah.
But not to bring it down too much on that one. But moving on, it's funny, there's only 2 movies. He's directed 11 movies, right?
Yeah.
There are only 2 on this list that I never saw. And unfortunately, the next one is one of them. 1970s The 12 Chairs. Have you seen it?
I have not either. So it's I know of the plot sort of that, they're trying to there's I think jewels sewn into one of the 12 chairs, right? Like that's the caper, like and it's based off of like an old Russian book, right?
Yeah, and it hits a lot of the stuff that he would like to hit in later bits. Like it's it's in the 1920s. He loves talking about the old world, Soviet Union, revolutions. He's a very educated man, and so much of his stuff would often revolve around war and foreign nations and power and things like that. And it's a interesting little comedy by all accounts, and I just never took time to see.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't know it existed, because it didn't blow up to the way that his other movies obviously blew up.
Right. Yeah.
And listen, for what else we can say, it was very well received by critics at the time in 1970. And by quotes, he has said it is his favorite movie of his.
Yep. He's most proud of it, actually, too. That's what he says.
Makes me feel like a real asshole that I didn't even realize this existed, and I'm a real basic bitch on knowing all the other ones.
The one fun note I had from that when I did a little bit of research about it is that originally he wanted Peter Sellers to play Father, I guess it's Fyodor, or it's then his wife, Anne Bancroft, saw Dom DeLuise on TV and suggested him. And their first meeting between Dom DeLuise and Mel Brooks was almost 5 hours long. That was their
Oh my
first
God.
meeting together. And
They
so
probably had so much fun.
at the end of it, that was, essentially what, and Dom DeLuise like recounted this, like, so I'm paraphrasing, but Mel Brooks basically said at the end of the thing, he's like, I'm not sure if you're going to get the part. Peter Sellers may get this part, but I know we're going to be friends forever. And just like, just like such a
That's
nice.
awesome. That is nice. So moving on, the next one is the big one. My
Oh boy.
God, it's such a breakthrough. Blazing Saddles. And I
I
guess
mean, this year in itself, these two movies are incredible.
when I talked about so many people talking about, oh, he couldn't make a movie anymore. Oh, woke this, blah, blah, blah. All the people, a lot of people use Blazing Saddles as the reference because this movie is all about racism. It was co-written by Richard Pryor. It was supposed to star Richard Pryor, but he had a lot of problems with drugs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not, actually, it was not co-written by Richard Pryor. He definitely developed it with him though. Oh no, it was. iMDB just had so many writing credits on it. He was listed near the bottom. So it was, I knew it was co-written by him and it was supposed to star him in the Cleavon Little role. Yeah. And it was just like, my goodness. Talk to me about Blazing Saddles. I feel like
if you look at that though, Cleavon Little, I think almost was better. Like when I think about that, as great as Richard Pryor is,
he would have overshadowed it. He would have overshadowed it. Cleavon Little was able to slip in and be the role. Richard Pryor would have been Richard Pryor, and I don't know if it would have resonated the same way.
And we talked about the winking of things.
The 2020s, I can really talk about Richard Pryor. Sorry, please continue.
No, but I mean, but that was part of it, was the side look to the camera, or the winking part of it, to be like, are you kidding me? This is the guy who thinks he's better than me, the guy who can't figure out. I mean, it just, I won't list everything that I think is really funny, but just the whole part where he gets Slim Pickens and the workers to sing Camptown Race or Camptown Ladies is so funny. It just, and they all started, oh God. And that's one of those other things where there's one point where they get the dynamite and it's like the Bugs Bunny-esque portion of it to blow. There's certain parts of it that are just very, I don't know. It's enjoyment. Again, maybe delight's another good word for it. It's just they have a lot of good moments where you're just kind of chuckling in spite of yourself to say, this is just a silly, funny moment that I'm really enjoying within the context of, I guess, there's no serious plot to this. This movie just ends and barely does that.
And there's no serious plot, but there is serious overtones presented through comedy.
Absolutely.
Which is what really touches on so much of this for so many people, even to this day.
This is the fun one too. I mean, you can get into it if you want, but the casting fun. You said Richard Pryor. I don't know if you read the other ones too.
I've looked at a couple. Let's see. I assume that they're in the trivia here if I go down and take a peek at a few things. But let me look at the old production. There it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I did hear about this. Is that they had offered John Wayne the
Waco Kid,
Gene Wilder role. Yeah.
Yep. And he basically said that it was a little too blue for him, but he would be the first in line to go see it. Like, so it just is one of those things where that was Mel Brooks' cachet already, that they trusted it to be like John Wayne. This is a guy, America's cowboy, like the guy who had made the Western movie in the U.S. and he still understood that if Mel Brooks was making something about this, I know it's not going to be, it won't be making light. It'll find a way to incorporate the themes of Westerns, but into something that is really probably going to be funny and something I want to watch.
By the way, I don't know who Gig Young is, but I did know this bit of trivia is that he was cast. He was an alcoholic apparently, but he was cast to play the Waco Kid. And despite how iconic Gene Wilder is in the role, and despite working with him and the producers, he was flown out after a day of shooting where Gig Young collapsed. And it was like, hey, I need you right now for this movie. Yep. Which, by the way, did you look up Gig Young's Wikipedia? Because it doesn't have a happy ending.
Oh, no, I didn't.
In 1978, and this movie came out in 1974, Young murdered his 31-year-old wife 3 weeks after their wedding before turning the gun on himself and committing suicide at the age of 64.
Oh.
So, he's doing great.
Tortured individual, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so everything's fine. Anyway,
Uh,
back to
uh,
fun movies now.
so this is this is one of my favorite trivia pieces from this whole movie. This is
Yeah,
the
please.
first movie ever to include audible farting in it. How great
And
is
boy,
that?
do they. And I know it's not one. It ain't one. It's funny. This is my dad. I love my dad. But my dad is not a highbrow fella.
Okay.
My dad does not pick up on
Nuance.
overtones, nuance. Yeah. So my dad loves Blazing Saddles, but for all the farts and the overt stuff. I love it for all the other stuff. He
I don't
loves
know.
it.
I love
Listen,
the
I
farts
like it for
too.
the others. No, I do. But it's just growing up, and when I watched this movie with my dad as a kid, he loved it for completely different reasons than I loved it, but we both loved it. It was just very
Hmm.
interesting to see that go out. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, frankly, with that movie.
And this is his first time Madeline Conzen is one of his movies, right?
Yes. Yep. And that became a big one. But yeah, Rich, so moving on though, 1974.
Mm.
What a fucking 1-2 punch. And I
Oh my
like this
God.
movie. I don't know if I like it as much as Blazing Saddles. I know a lot of people tend to like this one more. The IMDb rating is higher.
Can
You
I raise
like
my
it
hand?
more.
I'm one.
Yes.
I love this movie.
You have talked to me about it offline briefly, but Young Frankenstein. Randy, the floor is yours. Go off about Young Frankenstein.
So I think I've talked about in the past how much I liked that Joe Dante would take certain elements that made things a little bit off kilter. So he would take a horror movie and inject comedy into it, or would take these certain things that don't always go together perfectly. And Mel Brooks made Young Frankenstein look like a classic 1930s horror movie from the Dracula,
It's
the Wolfman, all
pristine.
the
It's
it just
pristine.
and they have original set pieces from the 1931 Frankenstein movie in it. And it's because it looks like that, the dialogue and the gags are even funnier because it looks so authentic, and that it's just these things that are just so silly. And I love that like the juxtaposition of something very silly and ridiculous when it looks normal or looks whatever you want to call it. And the casting is brilliant. I guess Gene Wilder only wanted Marty Feldman for that role, and with good reason. He's amazing at it as Igor. And boy, everything works really, really well. Even just, I mean, Gene Hackman, is Gene Hackman even credited in the movie? I think, and
I don't think so.
Let's
look it up.
his little part is great. He basically only agreed to doing that. He was a golfing buddy of Gene Wilder's and just was looking. He already had an Oscar for he got an Oscar for The French Connection, right?
Yes.
And
yeah.
And he had just done so much of this dramatic stuff. He's like, I want to give comedy a try. And he steals the movie. I mean, his scene is hysterical. I mean, it is one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie. I can go on and on and on because it's just a movie that I adore. It was a Halloween. We watched it every Halloween growing up in my household, probably from when I was like 7. And just, there's a million quotes from it that I love. I can't gush and praise it enough.
And Peter Boyle is the monster. The dance sequence with the putting on the Ritz. The walk this way. The everything about it. Just everything is. It's
Werewolf.
exactly
there.
Right.
It's just like
there's so many things that are just still. I think there are jokes in this movie that people quote today that they don't know where it came from. They just hear the quote and know that's a thing you say at that point. That's one of those types of things that is transcended. Like I really do think one of those movies that somebody who had never heard of it could watch and be like, oh, I almost worry it could seem played out to people who don't realize that it's what innovated so many of these things.
Yeah. It's interesting because Blazing Saddles is definitely quotable. I think funnier contextually, maybe the Young Frankenstein. I just feel like there are so many quotes that hit from this one, and we might get into later, like other ones that seem like they may have a few more quotes, but boy, this one.
If you're putting the two up to each other, I think Blazing Saddles is funnier, but Young Frankenstein is a better made movie with better dialogue. But overall comedic, I would take Blazing Saddles. But they're both great.
Oh,
and
the one thing I would.
With this,
Can I get? I had two more. I had two more things. Sorry, it's
Yeah, yeah.
one was that actually originally Madeline Kahn was gonna play Inga, and Terry Garr was gonna play Gene Wilder's wife, and then they decided to switch that. They they asked if Terry Garr could do a German accent, and she tried it, and they said close enough, and and then she went and did it. And also apparently Gene Wilder is like the SNL Jimmy Fallon of this movie, where they had to reshoot so many times on scenes because he could not keep it together. He would just crack up constantly. So
That motherfucker. So moving on then to
yep,
Silent Movie,
yep,
1976. And
mm-hmm.
it's so funny to look at. He had made Blazing Saddles. I don't know when he decided that every time he did a movie, it was going to be a genre pastiche,
Yeah,
but or a satire of a type of film, because that is certainly what it became throughout the 70s, right?
yeah,
He kept that with the others a little bit, but he really, just to skip ahead as you're saying, he wouldn't make an original type story without this type of framework until 1991. So he has Silent Movie in 1976, which I've seen. I didn't love it personally, but it might just be because it's not my type of comedy, not my type of thing. I don't know. What do you got?
it's amusing, and it's one of those. It very feels like an Inside Baseball kind of winking movie. This in 1974, there was a movie came out called That's Entertainment! Exclamation point. That was a loving look of the past 50 years of MGM movies. And so I think that had brought back the allure of the silent movie era and how great those movies were because of it had been fresh in people's minds. And I think that was what persuaded Brooks to go in that direction for this kind of movie. So at the time, that was still sort of fresh in people's mind and ripe to be parodied. I think that's why it's amusing enough. But yeah, it's
Amusing enough is great. And, that's a great bit of context, because you're right, I believe, thinking about that type of, like, that coming out, because I remember That's Entertainment. It's sort of what the great movie ride at MGM used to be, I feel like.
right.
It took a lot of that.
Because he's trying to showcase all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes or everything. I did like his quote going into the movie is going to be the noisiest silent film ever made. So that's a good line.
So, and you'll notice, though, that no Gene Wilder, and you'll never have him again, despite their relationship being in all of these movies together, huge heights of success. This is the first movie where Mel Brooks is the lead in a Mel Brooks movie.
Right.
And there's a quote that I looked this up before researching for this. I was always fascinated. Why didn't they work together? And I don't know if you've seen this. Why didn't they work together again? Gene Wilder didn't want to work with Mel Brooks, the actor. He wanted Mel to be the director, the writer. He wanted it to, he's like, I don't want to be there if Mel Brooks is trying to be a movie star. I want to work there when Mel Brooks is focusing on the project in like writing and directing. And he goes, I would be happy to work with him again when he's not acting. And that just never happened again, which is such a bummer. Because I believe, I have to look at some of these other trivias. I believe there's at least one where he had tried to cast him and it didn't work out. But yeah, moving on from that, High Anxiety, which I like quite a bit. On IMDb, it's got a worse rating than Silent Movie and History of the World Part 1, which comes after, which I'm surprised. It's actually only it's got the lowest rating outside of Dracula Dead and Loving It. So, oh no.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I liked High Anxiety. I thought it was fun. Maybe it's because I like Hitchcock movies. And I like visually that type of thing. So while I didn't like Silent Movie because I don't care about that, being a Hitchcock fan, maybe that blew me into his, satire of Hitchcock films.
I would agree. I thought it was a fun send up of all those kind of movies. The critical response to it was that people seemed to think that Hitchcock himself was fairly funny, even though he was the master of suspense and thrilling.
He was very dry humor.
Right, exactly. And so it's harder to send that up when it's already sort of funny, right? Like when there are comedic elements to something. So how you do a takeoff on it that is a comedic parody of that. And so I think that was the overlying critical response to it, and maybe why it's not rated as high as some of his other ones.
That makes sense. It I note that while Silent Movie was Mel Brooks' first role starring in a film, because it's Silent Movie, this is his first role starring where he talks. So he obviously did not talk in. So, although, wait, what's the last? Isn't there one line of dialogue at the end of Silent Movie? I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember.
Marcel, the
Oh, he's
mime.
the one that actually says it. The mime actually.
Yeah,
I was trying to
the
remember if it
mime
was
says
him.
no. Yeah,
Marcel, the famous mime, actually says a word at the end of Silent Movie. That's right. I was like, I remember there's actually one word at the end of Silent Movie.
and it's no, I think, or non.
Yes. No.
French, no.
I was looking to see if this is the movie where he was going to cast Gene Wilder, but it is not. But I would like to read. This is the first truly bad review Roger Ebert gave Mel Brooks in this
Okay.
era. He said, one of the problems with Mel Brooks' anxiety is that it picks, this is kind of what you were saying, actually. It picks a tricky target. It's a spoof of the work of Alfred Hitchcock, but Hitchcock's films were so often funny themselves, and satire does work best when the target is self-important.
Mm.
So, being a Hitchcock thing, Mel Brooks held a private preview of the movie for Hitchcock to see his reaction. Hitchcock walked out at the movie's end without saying a word. Brooks was terrified that Hitchcock hated the movie, but days later, Hitchcock sent a congratulatory case of wine to Brooks, knowing that Brooks was a wine connoisseur, and declared the film splendid. I wish I had done it. And then he did propose a scene for the film, which the killer would chase Mel Brooks' character to the harbor, where Thorndike would then try to escape by taking a running jump onto the boat in the water, when they realized the boat was pulling into the docks, not pulling out of the docks. Mel Brooks loved the idea, but was unable to film it due to budget and time. So
that would have been good.
There you go. Yes. Mel Brooks said that anyone who had ever rolled a foot of film ever owes something to Alfred Hitchcock.
Not wrong.
No. So then going on to a movie that I like more than High Anxiety, that I like more than Silent Movie, maybe because I feel like back in the day, this was one of those Comedy Central repeat movies for a long time.
Sure.
So I saw it. 1981's History of the World Part 1, which I am the sucker that as an 8-year-old or younger didn't realize there was never a Part 2. And I was trying to explain to my parents, no, this is Part 1. But I get the joke now that I'm an adult. So it's Mel Brooks's take on history from the dawn of man until what, like the French Revolution, Industrial Revolution, kind of through that point.
I think, yeah, French Revolution, I think.
Yeah, which it's got a lot going on. It's just, we talked about earlier the Monty Python approach to comedy, how it was just a framework for sketches. This is a framework for sketches.
Totally.
But they're fun. They're fun.
Yeah.
There's no plot. The plot is the history of the world. Here's my take on this. Here's my take on this. And this to me is the first time that even though he starred in his other ones and he was building his thing through the 70s, in 1981, this is the first time I think this was sold on the brand of Mel Brooks is going to do history.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He didn't need to make a narrative plot because it's you fucking love Mel Brooks. Here's a bunch of Mel Brooks.
I thought the French Revolution stuff
and it works
wanes
for the most
a
part.
bit.
And I think it did
That's
pretty
the
well.
one criticism of it, but everything else is super funny. I love the Roman Empire stuff. I love the bit with B. Arthur. That's probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. But there's a lot of it. Even the stuff with the Stone Age with Sid Caesar, and then they find out that if you hit people, you can make the symphony. Oh, it's there's a lot of really good, just fun things in there that don't pay off. I guess that's a better way to do it. It's like, but you can see that it takes one or two beats to get to the final joke, which is fun.
Yes.
The 15 Commandments.
By the way, Carl Reiner, voice of God in the Old Testament segment, uncredited. Important note here too that the final, like one of the trailers for the fake Part 2 has the Jews in space segment, which is a parody of Star Wars, which really does eventually play heavily into Spaceballs.
Oh,
just that vibe, that feel, them actually doing it.
Well, and
which, by the way, oh, sorry. I was going to say it was his next movie, but we won't transition yet. Do tell. What do you got?
No, the only other thing I had is that it still had the same. I don't know. So would the Muppets have been first Muppet Show? Because it's, I mean, not to say something in space wouldn't be that, but Pigs.
Muppets was before History of the World.
Way they said it, because it just they said it the exact same way. So and maybe
I mean, everybody, you know, it's. I think Pigs in Space though wasn't original. They were taking that off like the 50s Buck Roger announcers.
Right. So
even the Pigs in Space announcers were making fun of the old 50s sci-fi serials.
and they kept doing it.
Like
Yeah.
that's
So
not it's all that. But then the first movie, what year were you born, Randy?
1980.
Okay. I was going to say the first movie that came out in our lifetimes, but you were barely alive in 81. So Spaceballs, 1987. And you notice he had a pretty regular clip of movies throughout the 60s, 70s, and into 80s. He took 6 years off between History of the World Part 1 and into Spaceballs. And it's interesting because I have to look it up. I thought, in my mind, because Spaceballs is beloved at this point. It is as beloved, I think, as anything he's ever done, is as watched as anything he's ever done. But I think that came with VHS and video. I don't think in the moment it was a slam bang hit, which is crazy to think about.
We're of the age that we probably watched this, a billion times on VHS or DVD as we got later in life. I may have spoken too soon when I said Young Frankenstein was the most quotable movie. This by far. I mean, it's this whole movie is just line after line. This is a Catskills comic or whatever wrote this movie.
Wrote a Star Wars movie.
Oh my God. But it's hilarious. It just, everything is super funny. The fact they got John Candy and Rick Moranis, two like bona fide comedians from the like big names that they're at some of the height of their power. Yeah. And some of the height of their movie powers. It just, that was a big deal. I think he wanted, I think Brooks wanted Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise, which is funny that we did like a Tom versus Tom breakdown, was trying to get one of them to be Lone Star.
I could have seen Tom Hanks.
Can you imagine? Like,
it's funny. Like Wikipedia has them both listed. I could see Tom Hanks before I see Tom Cruise, maybe just because of the material.
But as it turned out, I mean, he was great. So everybody worked really well in it. It was fascinating reading the back and forth about how I guess George Lucas's team basically did most of the post-production for it. I didn't realize that did a lot of the editing, and that was kind of a playing nice with them because they were making fun of them, sort of.
Well, but, do you know the and if you're about to say this, I apologize. Do you know how they got permission to parody this? Well, the one thing he had to agree to Lucas.
No merchandising, right?
Yeah, no merchandise, which is hilarious because of what a plot point it is in the movie. No merchandise. That's why there has never actually been Spaceballs merchandise.
And I guess Mel Brooks said that, I don't know how long ago it was, but he has the only yogurt doll.
Oh, that's great.
The one from the movie, he still has it. So, but I mean, I'd take a Spaceballs of flamethrower. Come on.
Yeah.
So, it stands on Rick Moranis' performance. This movie is great and hilarious, but Rick Moranis takes it to a 12. I mean, every note he hits is perfect. As just, oh my God, he's amazing as that chicken shit villain, but not like, oh.
I love Rick Moranis when you think of his 80s output, right? But I feel like this was he's great in Ghostbusters as Louis Tully. He's funny as the little nerd. He's great in a kind of similar, lovable everyman in Little Shop of Horrors. He's so good, right?
Yeah. This
is the only movie of Rick Moranis' career where I think you really get to see Rick Moranis do what Rick Moranis can do.
Yeah.
Rick Moranis as the SCTV Rick Moranis, this is that movie. He's cut loose. He's allowed to do whatever. I love Rick Moranis. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is a classic. He's not, listen, he brings charm to that role, but in theory, it could have almost been anybody. You know what I mean? It's that, no one's thinking about him. Listen, was he a good Barney Rubble? Actually, maybe. I don't know. He was a weird Barney Rubble choice.
Yeah.
But this is Rick Moranis tour de force, allowed to play, allowed to, like, this is trivia that I feel like so many people know, that you've probably seen this. The scene with the action figures when he's playing, completely ad-libbed by Rick Moranis. The entire thing. Yes. Just stone cold classic. Amazing.
Oh, it makes me laugh so hard.
And that's a credit to Mel Brooks to know the people that he's bringing in like that, to have Mel Brooks as a screenwriter. Mel Brooks is a writer, but to have the trust in a comic like that to go for it. Because he is someone who tightly plots, who tightly scripts. his career is based on how clever he has been as a writer, really. And to have the faith in Rick Moranis to do that is astounding.
And I guess Rick Moranis said that initially the um the costume for Dark Helmet was just a helmet. Like, it was a giant helmet was what he wore. And eventually, like, because of the costuming and like to make it work, it went down to the comically oversized helmet that he had.
Which
but
worked. Yeah.
Oh, totally. But I can only imagine him just walking out a giant.
It's interesting to look at the box office because I was really curious because obviously it's a classic at this point. Everybody loves it. We always talk about blah, blah, blah. They did the really shitty animated thing in the mid 2000s that everyone forgets exists.
Right.
They're always talking about doing a sequel. It had a budget of $22 million, which for 1987 is not an insignificant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it made money. It made $38 million. But I think for a movie where they spent $22 million with the names and the special effects and what they did, it was considered a disappointment at the time. But it wasn't a bomb where, oh my God, what have we done? It was a disappointment and wasn't loved. Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 stars out of 4. Siskel liked it more, gave it 3 out of 4. They both called it wildly uneven, but it was definitely a cult following, cult classic type of film that as the cult aged into being in charge, I think became just a genuinely beloved classic.
It was one of those movies that I think not only did you either have the VHS, I feel like it was on TV a lot too, so you could have taped it from there. Like I did that. That was I know that's how I watched it a million times. Is we taped it from the TV at some point.
Funny
and just wore that thing out.
I think, and I mean this, every single thing we just said, everything about cult classic, became beloved, didn't do great, everyone loves it, was on TV. Everything we just said for Spaceballs, I think we can now apply to Robin Hood Men in Tights. Every single aspect of how it was received and how it was beloved and how it grew up with people and it became more liked as time went on. I personally feel Robin Hood Men in Tights has that exact same reception. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Absolutely.
On which? I gave you agree,
oh,
disagree.
No. I think you said you'd agree, and I quickly said absolutely. No, I think that it had this same kind of take there, and it was great.
I'm really fascinated looking at the budget for box office for that one. That one actually did even better. I thought I'd remembered hearing that movie was a bomb, but I was clearly well off because that movie also only cost $20 million to make, and it made $72 million. It made a good, healthy early 90s profit. But I think the reason I may be hearing it didn't do well, I got to look up one thing. I'm not giving myself away until I know this for certain. It came out within a month of Jurassic Park. So it was Jurassic Park came out in June 93. Robin Hood Men in Tights came out in July 93. And I love Robin Hood Men in Tights, and I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater as a 10-year-old. But nothing was taken down the summer of Jurassic Park. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't fucking happening. I saw the release date and thought that feels suspiciously close. So, and that may be part of that perception and reception, frankly. And hey, listen to this. Mel Brooks actually did say that Men in Tights and Spaceballs are his top 2 selling films on video in an interview later in life. Like his VHS, DVD career, these 2 movies. And it's because of our generation, and you know it.
And and I think ones that were coming out that were within the time frame of people that would be consuming that, I think that's part of it too. So, but it's...
apparently Fox was thrilled with the film's performance over that summer, which I guess when you made a good $50 million up against Jurassic Park for the summer, you're probably doing okay, you know? I would be happy then too. Oh, you didn't get blown out. You made a profit and Jurassic Park came out last month? You're doing great.
Yeah.
So, I love this movie though comedically too. It's got such a unique cast of people that it has some of his regulars from over the years, but in small roles. This has none of his regulars in leads. It's got Richard Lewis as the bad guy, Prince John. Carrie Elwes as Robin Hood. Roger Reese, because I love me some Cheers. Robin Colcord from Cheers is the
Oh
sheriff of
yeah,
Rottingham. Yes.
right.
Amy Yazbek, who went on to be in the next movie we won't talk about, but was in Wings, the later seasons of Wings, and the
Hmm.
first lead acting role of Mr. Dave Chappelle as Achu. So there you go.
It's well, and then his dad being what, Isaac Hayes
Isaac
for.
Hayes and Tracy Ullman's in it, and Patrick Stewart's in it. And yes, you do have cameos from some of his regulars. You got Dom DeLuise, you got Dick Van Patten. There's a couple others in here I'm thinking of, but that's a good run of people. Anything
It's
else you can say about this one?
the one thing it's my own personal kind of memory of this movie. I mean, I watched it a whole bunch, but is one of my best friends in college would always do that if someone was being really loud or something was being just he would always do, I hope it's worth all the noise, like the thing that Prince John does. So it was just a very quotable, like usable quote for a lot of different things. And so he was just, and he is a very sarcastic guy with he's from central New York. So has a very kind of that Cleveland, Buffalo, like long A sounding nasally accent, and so just to hear it in that, it's very entertaining.
I do have one reference that I had made very recently. I can't remember if I texted you this, but now that it's weeks removed, I can talk about a work thing I did because it was like a lot of social media restrictions. I worked the 75th NATO conference in DC. It was this really like high security, formal dress, big event, all this. I got one story from it, which was me making a pop culture reference that fell on deaf ears. Was the opening day at the public forum, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and you could probably figure out where I'm going with this if you know the quote for the movie, was the guest speaker that opened it all. And the quote in the movie is Abe Lincoln, but we had a font that was for Anthony Blinken, and I just went to the person next to me and I went, I didn't say Abe Lincoln. I said, hey, Blinken. And they just looked at me and I went, all right, I'll be over here. Let's have a good show, everybody. Good talk. So we move on to the final movie he has. Oh, we skipped one. I went right to Men in Tights.
I was wondering about
We skipped Life Stinks because I was so excited to talk about Robin Hood after Spaceballs. So 87 is Spaceballs, 91 is Life Stinks, 93 is Robin Hood Men in Tights. We're going to dial back to Life Stinks in 91. At the start of this, I said there are two movies I have not seen. This is the other one. And ironically, he had said that while he thinks like maybe stylistically Young Frankenstein is the best movie he's ever made, his personal preference of his two favorite films are 12 Chairs and Life Stinks. I've not seen either one. So I'm a real sack of shit. But have you seen Life Stinks?
It was a long time ago. I don't know how to frame it. I mean,
quick reference, it's not a parody. It's not a pastiche.
Right.
He doesn't break the fourth wall. It's his first movie since The Producers in 1967 that isn't one of those types of films or following a Mel Brooks formula.
Right. And he's basically I don't know what to call him, like what is it? A CEO that is just looking to at any just make himself wealthier, and enters essentially into both him and Jeffrey Tambor, who's another dueling CEO, basically make a bet that they want this area of a slum in Los Angeles just for their own, to essentially tear it down and make up their own thing. And the bet is made that Mel Brooks's character, if he can live for 30 days in the slum, then, and he has to stay within he can't leave, right? So like once he goes within this certain block radius, he can't leave. He's outfitted with like an ankle bracelet. It's this whole thing. And
wait a fucking minute. This came out in 1991?
Yeah.
So did the movie The Super with Joe Pesci, where he had to live in his dilapidated building and he wasn't allowed to leave.
There are, yeah.
Oh my God! So we've talked about in other episodes in other years. The two volcano movies, the two asteroid movies. I didn't know there was a summer where they put out two slumlord living in dilapidated conditions movies.
Kinda, yeah. Like it's almost. I mean, he is wealthier than Joe Pesci's character, but it is the same idea. And he comes to know some other homeless people, ends up falling in love with one of them, played by Leslie Ann Warren, notably from Clue, played Miss Scarlet, and has been in other stuff, I'm sure, too. But
Yeah.
and it's more just his understanding of how it's not everything to be, the richest and all this, that your classic kind of story of understanding what's most important in life. And that's the gist of it. It is a fine movie.
Okay.
It
was unfortunately his first box office bomb. It only made $4 million on a budget of $13 million. And that is, and you wonder, I have not looked at interviews about this, but you do wonder if that is why he immediately turned around and made Robin Hood Men in Tights, returning to his traditional formula to recoup, which again did very well and everybody seemed to really enjoy.
Yeah, so, I think that's exactly right.
And then obviously off the success of Robin Hood Men in Tights, became a classic for a lot of people, well loved, made a good profit. The studio was happy. They're happy to give him a little bit more money. Let's do it all again. Let's run it back. Dracula Dead and Loving It, which is the 11th and final film Mel Brooks has directed. He turned pretty much to Broadway and movie producing exclusively after this. And I would like to note that while we've been talking about his directing career, he has been producing films throughout the years in the 80s, and through his Brooks Film Company. Famously, he produced The Elephant Man and left the Brooks Film logo off of it because he was worried people would laugh and think it was a comedy. Prolific outside of what he had been doing. Obviously, he is, I don't know if I mentioned this off the top, I meant to, and if I did, I forgot that I didn't. He is one of only 19 people to EGOT. He has won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. The man is doing pretty well, and he's doing all right. As one area, he has transitioned to another. But we are going to finish things out talking about Dracula Dead and Loving It, 1995, starring Leslie Nielsen. You talked about the Zucker Brothers movies. Your Airplane, your Police Academy, Naked Gun films. I said Police Academy. I went to say Police Squad. Naked Gun. Dear God, it was not Police Academy. Police Squad. Naked Gun films. In theory, written on the box, on the label, what a match made in heaven, that could be the thing. Sure. But I've thought about this a lot. First, I would say that this movie is a weird mashup of, they take the style of 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula, but they clearly just want to make a parody of the 1931 Bela Lugosi Dracula, and they smash the two together into a mismatch that doesn't entirely work. And by not entirely, I mean it really doesn't work. I thought it was really fascinating. I thought about, in theory, Leslie Nielsen should be a match made in heaven here, right? No. I've thought about this a lot leading up to this. Mel Brooks was never a straight man, even when he was the straight man. He was mugging and goofy and kind of overacting. Leslie Nielsen, in his best roles, is a straight man with comedy happening around him. Whenever Leslie Nielsen has to be funny, it's really not that good. He's not you think about his best roles. He is the straight man with the nonsense happening around him, and he plays it straight.
Yep.
When he has to be funny, it's not great. And here, he has to act and be Count Dracula, and he's trying to be Bela Lugosi, and he's putting on the accent. And it doesn't work because it's not the wheelhouse he should be in.
The things that worked in Young Frankenstein are just not here. So
they want this to be Young Frankenstein.
Right.
They want this to be Young Frankenstein, and it doesn't work. And they had said that they thought about shooting it in black and white, but they didn't do it. And maybe, who knows? Maybe if it would have worked, great. Good cast, good idea, good pedigree, unfunny film. Roger Ebert hated it, and Mel Brooks got very defensive to him about it, which is odd. Which he said he met critic Roger Ebert after Ebert had given Dracula Dead and Loving It a negative review, and he lashed out at him saying, listen to you, I've made 21 movies, obviously not just directing, but yeah, I made 21 movies. I'm very talented. I'll live in history. I have a body of work. You only have a body, which really upsets me that Mel Brooks felt he needed to make a fat joke at Roger Ebert because he didn't
Right.
like one of his movies. And Roger Ebert wrote he was very saddened by that encounter, but he had to be honest that the movie just didn't work. And here's the thing, Roger, we don't always agree, but you're right on this one. It didn't work.
I don't think there's a ton else to be said there. That there were probably opportunities to do some things, but it felt over. I don't want to say overstuffed, but they tried to shove some stuff in there that didn't work. I mean, I think that's what I like so much about Young Frankenstein. The pacing works really well in Young Frankenstein. It happens. It breathes. It's not overlong.
Things that work, you're right. There are a few things where Peter McNichol as Renfield in this, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's the type of person that if Mel Brooks had kept making movies or if Peter McNichol had been in a different era, would have been a Mel Brooks regular. You could tell by watching the movie. He fits in so well. He plays it right. He is one of the highlights of this film, working to save a film that doesn't work. And then simply because he's one of our patron saints of this podcast, Steven Weber as Jonathan Harker. God bless him. Love you, Steven Weber. I'll always take any moment to reference you and anything that you've done and your interesting career. So I love you, sir. Playing what is technically the Keanu Reeves part in from Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I think doing a better British accent than Keanu Reeves did. For what?
Not the highest bar, but yes.
No, it's a very low bar, but I'll give it to him. Damn it,
sure.
But, you get a few of the regulars in here. You get Harvey Korman. Anne Bancroft plays the gypsy woman in a fun cameo. It is what it is. And then after this, he would transition to doing Broadway work. He made one of the biggest shows of all times when he adapted The Producers. He would make some other stuff. He got his EGOT. But that's Mel Brooks, an interesting dive that we knew could only be about half an episode because he only directed 12 films, and there's not a lot else to go on, but there's enough to go on where I felt like we got some good material out of it. Some good discussion about the evolution of film and where you could go and the nature of comedy and whatnot.
Indeed.
And any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I would encourage anyone who has not seen these, they are worth a look just because it's fun to kind of see what he's trying to accomplish. I would, there's a couple,
even the lesser ones, I would take the time to watch. Yeah.
But that probably goes to you and me for 12 Chairs. We need to seek that one out. So
yeah, I should watch Life Stinks apparently. But if you love us, and boy, do I hope that you love us, Randy. Do you hope that people love us?
I really do. We're pleading. No, we're in that stage
pleading.
Of this.
We're begging you. What you can do is leave us a positive review and those 5 stars on your podcast app of choice. And listen, if you disagree with us, that's fine too. You can send me an email at mikebarcode, that's MikeBarcode @gmail.com to say, I love Life Stinks. How can you have not seen it? You're a Philistine and a plebeian. And I'll be like, Randy, did this email come from you? And you go, shut up. And it gets really uncomfortable.
It's only twice a week I send something like that. So.
Yeah. Oh, cool. A fan. Oh, it's Randy yelling at me again. La, la, la. You can also find me at Mike Barcode on TikTok and Instagram, talking about whatever, talking about life, maybe some show stuff sometimes. And that's pretty much it. We'll get out of here. Randy, anything?
No, thanks everybody for listening. Feel free to engage. We are very intrigued. We come up with our own topics that we try to think are of interest, but we're game for whatever you got. So bring the suggestions.
We would like suggestions. So say the line so we can get out of here.
And on that note, goodbye, everybody.